All right, this morning we've got a brand new look at how Americans are feeling about the state of the U.S. economy. NBC News released a poll less than 2 hours ago revealing that a majority of voters are not happy with Donald Trump's early job performance on the economy, which was a central issue in the campaign. 44% of registered voters say they approve of the way the president is currently handling the economy. 54%, a majority, say they disapprove. Now, with respect to Trump's handling of inflation and the cost of living, 42% say they approve of what he's doing. Again, 55% say they do not approve. And when it comes to Americans' overall view of the economy right now, only 1% of respondents say that they are excited about it. 17% say it's good. The vast majority had a more negative view. 39% saying the economy is only fair. 43% saying it's poor. This is the first time in a national NBC News survey that Donald Trump had a majority of Americans against his handling of the economy. This all comes amid a tumultuous few weeks in the stock market and as American companies grapple with Trump's chaotic trade wars. Joining me now is the Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a senior member of the Senate Judiciary, Budget and Finance Committee. Senator, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. Part of the confusion here is all of the things that Donald Trump is doing and then not doing and the trade wars. This is all operating outside of the normal order of political discourse and discussion about what a budget should look like and what tariffs should look like and what trade policy should look like. This all seems to be coming from Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that the chaos has its own price. And we're seeing that particularly around the tariffs. I'm hearing a lot from small businesses in Rhode Island who don't appreciate the tariffs, but what is frightening to them is not knowing what the tariffs are going to be. Is it going to be 0%? Is it going to be 25%? Is it going to be 50%? How do you order things if you don't know? You have to rewrite contracts. There's a huge stall that is taking place probably across the whole country. I don't think it's just Rhode Island. The uncertainty of not knowing what the environment is in which you're trying to do business is the 100% product of Trump's own reckless and chaotic personality.
Let's talk a bit about something that you're involved in, and that is the Donald Trump's pick, the nomination to lead the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Research, Dr. Mehmet Oz. There was a hearing before your Senate Finance Committee on Friday in which he was asked very specifically questions about whether he would protect Medicaid. Now, obviously, the budget that just that the Republicans have put forward that has been passed, the continuing resolution, does involve massive cuts to Medicaid, generally speaking in favor of tax cuts for the wealthy. Obviously, Mehmet Oz is going to be faced with some realities, but he wouldn't tell you that on Friday.
Yeah, I think the evidence is piling up that the Trump administration wants to go after Medicaid. And this is just the latest confirmation of that. You see it in the numbers that the House passed, that they can't get to the numbers they want without a massive attack on Medicaid. And then you also see it with former Social Security Commissioner Martin O'Malley's analysis of what's going on over at Social Security, that it looks like while they're lying about refusing to cut Social Security benefits, they've sent in the muskrats to basically destroy operationally Social Security so that there is an interruption of benefits. And now they've got private equity people and tech bro people in Social Security. And Trump can now say, look, they've stopped sending out benefits. It's an emergency. I'm handing Social Security over to tech bros and private equity folks. And so, you can see these attacks coming and we need to gear up.
Social Security is an important conversation to be had from a policy perspective, how it remains properly funded. The issue, though, that Elon Musk brought up in an interview last week is that Social Security and what he calls entitlements broadly are rife with fraud, waste, fraud, and abuse. That's his answer to everything these days. That's actually not the problem in Social Security at all. In fact, that's just definitely not what the issue is.
Not true. It's totally not true. We know that 99% of the money that goes through Social Security gets out to where it's supposed to be. And we also know that his allegations of fraud, that they're 160-year-old, Methuselahs getting benefits, are nonsense. There's an actual explanation of why that is in the Social Security database. Basically, it's an error mode. And people who are supposed to be tech bros ought to be able to figure that out. So the fact that they're still lying about it and the fact that Trump is still lying about it is a strong signal, I think, of intent to raid and attack Social Security.
Senator, talk about the budget resolution that avoided the government shutdown. You were not one of the Democrats who voted in favor of it. Why not?
No, I think that the continuing resolution, as it was the so-called continuing resolution, it was really a very peculiar, monstrous little thing, was something I just couldn't bring myself to vote for. But I do think that what we need to do right now is restore the focus on getting back after the MAGA effort, back after Trump, back after Musk, back after corruption, back after attacks on Social Security, back after chaos, and not get into an internal fight about the 10 very respected colleagues you're showing right now who had a different view. It simply doesn't serve us to have that be the narrative. We're in a fight for this democracy, and we've got to fight the bad guys, and the bad guys, the dangerous ones, are Trump, Musk, and vote. And I think if there's a leadership change we need, it's a leadership change at the House where Leader Jeffries becomes Speaker Jeffries. When he becomes Speaker Jeffries, then we can start putting an end to the madness.
Senator, good to see you as always. Thank you for joining us, the Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. We'll be right back.